Hello, everyone. I'm Bridget Cook-Burch, and I'm so excited to introduce you to Karen Ann Bulluck, who is the national best-selling author of Discovering Power, the first in the Ascending Ladders series. And today, Karen is here to tell you all about her second book in the series. So welcome, Karen. And we're so excited to know more about you, more about this book, and we're going to also discover how it was to write this incredible book that you've just been telling me about. So tell us about your book.
Well, Bridget, I'm excited to be here with you today. The title of my book is Pursuing Truth. It delves into a combination of issues that leaders face in the workplace, as well as the personal relationships that can get awfully complicated in corporate situations. So let me tell you a little bit about Discovering Power before I get into the second book of the series. The first book kind of sets it up nicely because we get introduced to our heroine, Sheryl Simmons, and she is a corporate executive, and she learns all about discovering her power as she transitions through some serious layoffs in her company, some changes in management, and some things that are spilling over a little bit into her personal life. And so the first book concentrates on Sheryl and her story and really dives into who she is as a person and who she is as a leader, which is obviously the most important part of that. With the second book, we get both a corporate look into Sheryl's life, as well as a little bit more exploration of her personal life and the personal life of her husband. In Pursuing Truth, which is the second book of the series, Sheryl finds herself in the middle of an investigation at her office because one of her subordinates finds some potentially nefarious activity going on in the company. And Sheryl has to act on that. So she's dealing with a lot of potential deception, and she's got to find out the truth of what's going on at the office. In the meantime, her husband, their relationship has kind of gotten rocky, and she's not exactly sure why. So there's another area where she's pursuing truth because she's got to find out what's going on with her husband. Now, Dave plays a bigger role in book 2 than he did in book 1 because he actually is one of the narrator characters in 2. And Dave all of a sudden finds himself in a little bit of a dicey situation, both with his wife and one of his female coworkers. And her name is Alisha. And Alisha plays a big role because she's kind of made some assumptions about her relationship with Dave that Dave may or may not be on board with. So there's a lot of entanglement between personal life and professional life that goes on in this book, as goes on in life, right? I mean, none of us leaves our corporate lives totally in corporate or our personal lives totally at home. So this book really explores both relationships within the workplace around the work, as well as relationships in the workplace around how, we make friends and how we interact with people, because our relationships aren't just business relationships all the time. We make friends at work.
Wow, that's so beautiful, Karen. And you know what I love is how you take actual situations in ethics, in leadership, in servant leadership, in a number of different avenues that we face in real life, and you incorporate this into such succulent books. Like, your character interactions are really beautifully delicious. I would love to know, tell us a little bit about your background so that we have an understanding of where the inspiration for some of these stories came from and how you're seeing this actually evolve in the workplace today.
Well, Bridget, I spent 30 years in corporate. I was an executive vice president and member of the board of directors for my company at the time I left corporate and decided to pursue other interests like writing and like coaching people and helping people take more risks in their life. And a lot of my books kind of talk about characters that are needing to take risks. And one of the things that I'm really finding both in my corporate experience and even in current corporate experiences and with entrepreneurs, to be honest with you, is people really struggling to take the risks that they need to take. And some of that is around the corporate environments and the way corporate tries to put us in boxes. And I think comes out in the novels that I'm writing is how people navigate the boxes and the roles that they play in corporations. We tend to follow the norms and the cultures of our companies, right? And that doesn't always work because they can sometimes conflict with our own cultures and our own personal values. And that's one of the things that I really love to dive into in the novels, because I see it so often in corporate environments today, yesterday, all the time, right? Because we always have this, here's the organization's values and culture, and here's our own personal values and our own personal integrity. And as we navigate our relationships within companies and outside of them, then those things sometimes come into conflict. And I see that so often with people today. And I love to explore that in relationships, in my books, and with my clients.
I love that. So, who would you say that you're reaching with this book?
Well, it's been interesting to see the feedback that I've gotten from Discovering Power and the people I've reached there, because there's been a variety of people. First of all, I've had people in corporations that have reached out to me and said, wow, this really helped me because I'm in a situation where I'm facing layoffs, or I'm a leader who is having to do layoffs. I've been in some of these situations, and this book gave me a different perspective on them. So I've had that, which has been really awesome. I've also had a lot of feedback from people that are not in corporations who are really interested in, wow, does this stuff really go on in corporations? I had no idea because I haven't had any experiences with that. But also, the values of a leader and the way leaders show up in the world impacts me as an entrepreneur, or impacts me in my daily, day-to-day charity work or whatever else they're doing. So it's really interesting to see how the leadership lessons that were in Discovering Power impacted people from all different kinds of businesses, not just people in big corporations. And I think Pursuing Truth is going to do the same thing, because there's a lot about personal relationships in it, which of course are applicable across the board. And the lessons from and the things we dive into from the corporate world are also applicable in all different aspects of our lives as well. So at the end of the day, we're talking about people, we're talking about leadership, and we're talking about living in integrity. And I think that's a universal appeal.
I think so too, and a universal struggle sometimes. Like you mentioned, the dichotomy sometimes between the corporate culture and our personal values, and how those dynamics come into play. So, what was the impetus and the brainchild of this book? Because when you finished Discovering Power, you knew you were not done, that there were other intricacies and other issues, or deeper issues, that you knew you really wanted to be able to explore. So tell us a little bit about that. Where'd that come from?
Well, at the end of Discovering Power, Cheryl's relationship with her husband was a little unresolved. And I wanted to resolve that both for myself and for my readers. And then when I started thinking about that and started listening to Sheryl and Dave and what they were going through, one of the things that really came to the forefront is how the relationships between men and women in the office can be misinterpreted, can be misunderstood, both by the people around them as well as people within the relationship themselves. I mean, people joke about their workplace, their work husband or their work wife, but it's real. Those things they're very real. And I wanted to explore that further. And I felt like the way things were going with Sheryl and Dave, it would be really interesting to see, okay, if Dave has a workplace relationship, what would that look like? And how would that impact his relationship with his wife? And what would the person, the woman that he's involved with at work feel like?
Yeah, and all those interweaving of conflicts and tensions that you do so well, which is fantastic. This is such a good read. So I'd love to ask you, in writing this, tell us a short piece of one of your favorite scenes. Like, what's a piece that you just absolutely love because perhaps there's tension or, nothing too close to the end of the book, but somewhere that was exciting and inspiring for you to write?
One of the most fun pieces of it, without giving away the story, is Dave's interaction with his friend Robert at work. Because as a character, I don't know where Robert came from, but he is so much fun. And he kind of chides Dave. He's kind of always poking at him and kind of pointing out in a humorous way where Dave is going astray. So Robert's trying a little bit to keep Dave on the straight and narrow. And the interaction between the two of them throughout the book is really fun. I particularly like it, at the beginning where Robert is giving Dave all these warnings and Dave is like, you don't know what you're talking about.
Until he does.
Until he does. Yeah, until he does. Absolutely.
So this is really fun because, one of the things that, you are a very creative fictional writer. So here you have all this business acumen and all of the breadth of experiences and all of the clients too with their stories that tell you things. And then you also have this other beautiful aspect of your storytelling where you allow the characters to lead where the books are going. So did you have any experiences where you thought the book was going to go one way and then your characters led you along a different path? Tell us a little bit about how they show up for you.
Oh my gosh, all the time. I'll sit down to write and I'm planning to write one thing and I'm thinking, okay, this is what's going to happen next. And I start to write, I'm going, something's not feeling right here. And I'll walk away from it for a little bit. And then all of a sudden the characters will say, yeah, we're going to do this. And I'm like, huh? Wait, why are we doing that? It's always so much fun what they do. So I love writing the books because I'm as surprised as people that are eventually going to read them because I don't know what's going to happen next half of the time either.
That's wonderful. I love that they become such a living, breathing, three-dimensional characters to you. And they certainly do to the reader when we're in the middle of this. It's like, oh my gosh, you have to be kidding. And we can picture and visualize because you're such a descriptive writer. And I also love these deeper nuances that you're not afraid to explore. So will you share with us about daring to transcend and what that means? Because here you have, this fictional part of you and piece of you that the readers are absolutely going to love. And then you also have daring to transcend, which is really born of the incredibleness of you responding to deep needs in corporate life and in business life for entrepreneurs as well as those who are deeply enmeshed in other people's businesses. So tell us a little bit about that and if there are any, not strings, but threads that kind of weave their way through this.
Of course there are strings that weave through it because everything always weaves together. It's so funny in our lives how that happens. So daring to transcend, let me start with the word transcend because it's kind of a big word at times, and it means to rise above. And rising above, surpassing the norms, exceeding limitations, going beyond what is the normal human experience. And I added the phrase daring to the front of it because it's an area where a lot of people are afraid to go, to really stretch their limits, to really take big risks, to really get outside their comfort zones. And so daring to transcend is all about helping women leaders, whether they're in corporate or in their own businesses, identify where they're holding themselves back, figure out the things that are stopping them from really taking the big risks they need to take to live extraordinary lives and to have extraordinary careers and make impact and the contribution to the world that they're really here to make. And it shows up in my books because my characters, particularly Cheryl, but some of the other characters in there are growing towards that, are really looking to go beyond just what's normal. They're looking to go beyond the day-to-day drudgery, if that's the right word. I'm not sure that's the right word, but they want to live extraordinary lives. Cheryl in particular, she's the leader in that, but I think the other characters can be inspired by her. And so I'm inspired by Cheryl, and my clients are inspired by Cheryl. And I want people to be inspired to take those big risks, not recklessly. And there's a difference between risky and reckless that I always talk about. I'm not talking about being reckless, but taking those risks in a healthy, expansive way in order to make a bigger impact.
Oh, I think that's beautiful. It's one thing that I absolutely love about you, and I love about your characters, because we've seen the statistics where 80% of the working population are the walking dead. Like, they're not happy in their lives. They're not happy in their business life, in their positions, in their situations and circumstance. If you only have 20% of people who are blissfully happy in what they do, it makes us recognize that there's a pattern out there of living well beneath our potential. And so for you to have both a coaching practice and speaking practice, as well as these incredible stories filled with, do I take this risk? Do I not? And what happens when I do? And then for the resolutions and the other things to come into play. And I also love that you have twists and turns, the things that we're not expecting. Book 2 is an adventure all on its own, and it is a beautiful standalone book. I also love that it's very different from book 1, but they coalesce so nicely in terms of the characters themselves and the journeys that they're on. But I love that the twists and turns are different. I love that the risks are greater because she's already discovered her power, and now there's some greater risks on her shoulders and on her team and other things. And so way to up the ante, as I like to say, and to have more at stake for your characters even. So just a fantastic way for us to go on a journey with you, and for women leaders to go on a journey within ourselves and to discover more of what could be possible by learning from someone else's story. So thank you for the beauty and the gift of this. What would you really love readers to know about this book?
Well, as you say, it really takes a lot of twists and turns. The characters came so to life for me, and the way they told their stories, really, because I felt like I was just a conduit of them telling their stories, were so powerful and so intriguing. They intrigued me. I really fell in love with all of them, and I expected not to really like particularly Alisha. I was expecting not to like her as a character, but I ended up really falling in love with her, and in a very different way. So each of the characters has their own unique qualities that we can relate to on a different level. Cheryl has some qualities that I love and I can relate to, and so does Alisha, and so does Dave, as well as, the supporting characters in the book. And I think that's what makes it so much fun and so intriguing, is that we really can see aspects of ourselves reflected in all of the characters, and we can find things to fall in love with all of the characters. And like I said, I was so surprised about falling in love with Alisha, because I really didn't expect to when I first started hearing her character. But I fell in love with her so much that she's going to be another big character in book 3. So
I love knowing and hearing that. That just tickles me, makes my heart sing because she is a very multidimensional character. She's really, really delicious to follow in this book and to crawl inside her mind as you're able to let us do and see something. So that is wonderful. Can you give us a little indication of what is next with her?
Well, she makes a big move in book 2 from California to New Jersey. I'll give that little piece of it away. And then all of a sudden she's got to deal with the consequences of her move. So that's one of the things that she's going to be dealing with in book 3 is, oh my gosh, now I'm in New Jersey. What am I going to do? Because it's a lot different than California.
Most definitely. Well, I love that. Just knowing that because the readers, once they read this book, they're gonna want to find out more. So fantastic. I would love to know how can readers get in touch with you and what's the invitation that you have for them?
Readers can get in touch with me most easily on LinkedIn. That's my social media platform form of choice. So just Karen Ann Bulluck on LinkedIn. And I have a weekly newsletter on LinkedIn, plus lots of posts about risk taking and about women's leadership. So I love to talk about those things and creativity, right? So risk taking and creativity are sort of my 2 main topics I talk about, although I weave in other things so it doesn't get boring. They can also connect with me on my website, daringtotranscend.com. You can sign up for my newsletter there also. Plus, you get little extra bonuses from the newsletter that you get on my website than on LinkedIn. And you can learn more about me. You can sign up for the waiting list for book 2. You can take a look at buying book 1 and follow along as the Ascending Ladder series develops, which is really fun and exciting. I'm working on book 3 now, and it's awesome. I'm really enjoying it. I can't wait to see where it's gonna go either. So if you want to follow along with the development of that story, as well as all the other stuff that I'm working with, you can sign up for that on my website, daringtotranscend.com.